Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ellen Schmeding, and I'm the director of the County of San Diego Health and Human Services Aging and Independent Services Program. Thank you. Thank you. It's a great honor to be with all of you today, and I thank you very much for coming. Now, what we're going to do first is I'd like to ask you all to stand as we get ready to present the colors. I'd like to welcome the San Diego County Sheriff's Department Color Guard, and I'd like to invite them to present the colors. Now, I'd like to ask you to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please retire the colors. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look in your program by now, and you can see the exciting lineup of workshops we have for you this afternoon. I can promise you that any workshop you attend will offer you a chance to learn something very exciting and also have a chance to meet others who are interested in some of the same topics. The only concern I had about the program was we had so many choices. So we do have 15 different workshops, and we really invite all of you to stay this afternoon and participate in one of those wonderful, or more, at least 3 workshops, and some of you may want to hop from place to place. We'll see. Okay, we're just about ready. Uh-oh. Good morning once again. We'd like to welcome you to this year's Aging Summit and give a special shout out to our North County audience at the Escondido Center for the Performing Arts. A big thank you to Lisa Lipsy and Georgianne Grote, who led the team putting together the North County program. And I know they did an excellent job, and I'm so glad all of you in North County can join pretty much a packed room here at Town and Country. Now, they've done an amazing job, and I'm sure all of us are going to learn a great deal today. I'd also like to give a big shout out to my peer, Chuck Matthews, the Deputy Director for the North Regions, who's emceeing the event in North County today, and also a thank you to Supervisor Dave Roberts, who said a few words. This is our 9th Aging Summit. Every other year, we bring our community together to look at key issues impacting older adults and persons with disabilities in our own neighborhoods. This year, we're spotlighting a couple of different areas of critical importance: the challenges of Alzheimer's disease and its impact on family caregivers, as well as the issue of safety and how this impacts all of us. Safety involves many areas of our lives: elder abuse, identity theft, disaster preparedness, internet crime, even preventing falls. You'll learn more about these concerns as well as the efforts to tackle Alzheimer's disease through our many speakers and workshops today. We selected this week for our Aging Summit in part because this Sunday is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Research published in the American Journal of Public Health found that 1 in 10 Americans over the age of 60 had experienced some form of elder abuse, be it emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, or some form of neglect in the previous year. And that statistic is astounding and quite disturbing. This figure also does not include financial fraud or financial abuse, a crime to which older adults are particularly vulnerable. And when you add the aspect of cognitive loss due to Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, the possibility of being a victim of abuse increases dramatically. Now, the County of San Diego Adult Protective Services receives over 1,000 abuse calls every single month related to the various types of elder and dependent adult abuse. We're very thankful to have great law enforcement partners in our county and an elder abuse prosecution unit in the district attorney's office to help battle elder abuse and fraud. Thank you. Now, we wouldn't be here today without our sponsors, and we have quite a few, and we want to say a special thank you to our gold sponsors, Health and Human Services, County of San Diego. We have sponsorships from Behavioral Health Services, from our own Aging and Independent Services, as well as Public Health. And we couldn't do an event this size without the support of our partners, AARP. They really pitched in once again this year to offer registration, outreach, and information, and we thank them for that. Another gold sponsor, San Diego Gas and Electric. We have the North County Community Action Network, or NORCAN, as well as the Sycuan and Barona tribal governments, and our own Live Well partners, KGTV, Channel 10, and Azteca. And we have some bronze sponsors as well, Active Care, Care First Health Plan, Greenwood Memorial Park, Kaiser Permanente, and Molina Healthcare of California. We'd like to invite all of you to visit our sponsors and our exhibitors in the exhibitor hall, and please thank them for making this event possible today. Now, it's my great privilege to introduce my boss, Nick Macchione. Nick, thank you. Nick is the director for our Health and Human Services Agency. He has brought his expertise in public health to our region and to our county. And Nick is the driving force behind our own 10-year strategic plan for Live Well San Diego. Please welcome Nick Macchione, who will tell us more about the Living Safely component of our Live Well San Diego initiative.
Thank you, Ellen. Good morning. What a great crowd. I feel the energy in the room. I'm excited to be here. I haven't missed yet an Aging Summit that we've been doing. And it's actually one of the departments, of many departments of my Health and Human Service Agency, and an extremely important one. As Ellen pointed out, the theme today is creating a healthy and caring community. And we mean that here in San Diego. When you think for a moment, perhaps the biggest gift we've been able to achieve in the last century is the 30 added years of life. The 30 added years of life. But in San Diego, it's not just living longer. It's with purpose. It's with quality. Quality of years of life. And that is why events like this are so important, to bring us together to learn about how to be safer, to learn about the different services and programs available in this great county to help us live a long, purposeful, and quality life. Now, with those 30 years, though, we've gotten some new challenges. And one of those, which is a key theme today, is things like memory loss. It's things like Alzheimer's disease. And we're not standing idle to that. and many of you who are living with it or know a loved one who is, know firsthand what I mean. But you're going to hear from some remarkable people who are completely dedicated in finding not only the better way of providing services to helping that loved one, or perhaps yourself, but finding a cure. That's what we're really about. That's what Live Well San Diego is about. It is improving the life of every San Diegan. I'll leave with you the expression that we all talk about. It takes a village to raise a child. But we've now gathered all the villagers, you, because we have to take care of the villagers too. And that's what this summit's about. It's not only talking about all the programs and services perhaps you need or know of people need, but it's the thanking you for the service you provide as our villagers, making the difference of the younger generation who eventually will be here too, right? There's one thing with definitiveness is that we all shall be visiting the Aging Summit at some point. But hopefully all eyes on the nation are here in San Diego because we're doing it right. And we're doing it because we have leadership. And the next person I have the honor of introducing, and before I do, I'd be remiss if I just not say, in terms of leadership, we do have a phenomenal leadership team led by Ellen Schmeding, who is our Director for Aging and Dependent Services, and her remarkable team of staff and planning committee, and our Aging and Independent Services Advisory Council, and some of who are here, who dedicated their entire lives in making a difference for you. I think we need to give them a huge round of applause for this wonderful conference. Thank you. Thank you. But this wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the leadership from the highest level. And we have a phenomenal board of supervisors, and the next person I have the honor of introducing has been in office now for 21 years. She said, Nick, don't tell them that. She's been in service as long as some of the parking attendants that are out there. But the 21 years haven't just been a stick count. These are quality years. These are years that led to the building blocks that we're here today celebrating. Dianne Jacob is a woman that walks the talk and came in to reform government to make it a better place. And not only has she done that in her startling 21 years with the board and the rest of the board of supervisors, but this particular Aging Summit is one of her passions. And she really introduced this year in her state of the county that in continuing the Aging Summit, we were also going to focus on improving the lives of people who have Alzheimer's disease and their caregivers and finding a cure. That's the type of leadership we have in our board and we have in Supervisor Dianne Jacob. Let's give her a huge round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Let me try it again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And you can hear us all the way back in the back. Outstanding. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ellen. And thanks to all the AIS staff for the work that you have put into making this conference the biggest yet. Nick, I have to say, I've been compared to a lot of things, but never a parking attendant. That is a new one. Well, welcome to all of you to this Aging Summit. And I want to thank you all for coming today. And I know people are still trying to get in here. There's a big lineup still coming in, people driving their cars in. But I'm proud to say that this really has become the go-to event for those of you who care about aging issues. A special thanks to my colleague, Supervisor Greg Cox, who co-hosts this Aging Summit with me. Now, I really enjoyed, particularly this year, planning this event. But I hate to say it, I'm definitely starting to show my age. A few months back, I was talking to my young staff, And in 2005, some of you remember, we had Debbie Reynolds here as a speaker, and I suggested that maybe we have Debbie Reynolds back. And they said to me, Debbie who? Is she on Twitter? Well, anyway, you get it. This summit is a great chance for us to share ideas, learn new things, and I'm sure that each one of you here today have something to contribute. It's also a special opportunity for us to focus on some of the challenges that are facing our families, our communities, our county, like the need to improve conditions and care at some of our assisted living facilities and other elder care homes, like the grueling impact of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia on victims and their caregivers. These are not easy issues, and there are no simple solutions. They can be tough to talk about, but it's important that we do talk about it because they affect so many in San Diego County. These challenges come amid a seismic shift in our population. San Diego County residents are living longer, and by 2030, the number of people who are at least 75 years old is expected to nearly double, outpacing the growth of the rest of our population. This huge shift, this silver tsunami, is starting to test our communities and county government, our homes and hospitals, our public policies, and our personal lives. I'd like to say we're prepared. We are not. A special spotlight is being put today on one of the biggest issues facing many of our oldest San Diegans and their families, and that's Alzheimer's disease. We have an epidemic on our hands. Alzheimer's is now the third leading cause of death in the San Diego region. About 60,000 people, many of them our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones, have this incurable disease, and that number is expected to double in the next 15 years. Women in their 60s are about twice as likely today to develop Alzheimer's than they are to develop breast cancer. So it's time for us all to team up as a region and take on this disease, and we're taking it head on. The Board of Supervisors, at the urging of Supervisor Dave Roberts and myself, recently established the Alzheimer's Project, which is a countywide initiative to address the impact of this disease and help to step up efforts to find a cure. We're bringing together for the first time local caregivers, health experts, leader of the Alzheimer's Association, and San Diego's world-class researchers and others to craft a strategy to tackle this epidemic. As the region's largest public health agency, the county can and will play a pivotal role in raising awareness and helping caregivers deal with the disease like Alzheimer's. So today's summit is a big part of that effort. We're honored to have speakers like writer Gail Sheehy and San Diego philanthropist Darlene Shiley. Both have cared for loved ones. Both speak from the heart. And I believe both can offer help and hope to caregivers who may feel like they're on a very lonely path. When it comes to researching Alzheimer's, San Diego leads the way, no question about it. No place is doing more to try to unlock the genetic code of Alzheimer's and come up with treatments to slow, or even better, to stop the disease. Many of the world's best and brightest researchers are based right here in San Diego, and their cutting-edge work on Alzheimer's will be the subject of one of the workshops here today. We're also offering sessions on diagnosing Alzheimer's and on memory loss, along with workshops on a wide range of other issues, including financial health and safety. But before we get to those, we have some special speakers, and one of them is very special to me. She is really one of a kind, and she is one of ours. She's a San Diegan. Darlene Shiley is widely known for her charity and her compassion. She and her late husband started donating money years ago. Today, the Shiley name is attached to many of our region's finest institutions, from theaters to health centers to medical centers, including the Shiley Marcos Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at UCSD and the Shiley Brain Research and Treatment Center, an arm of Scripps Clinic and the Scripps Research Institute. No one has done more to support the fight against Alzheimer's, and she has a very personal story to tell about how she joined that fight. Please join me in welcoming Darlene Shiley.
I have truly never seen a more attentive group of villagers in my entire life of speaking. You're very, very good, and I'm very impressed. Don't lose it, because this is very important. I put on makeup for you guys today. And if you don't think that's a big deal, ask my personal assistant, my executive assistant, Linda. We're driving in, she says, "Wow, you're wearing makeup. This must be important." Thank you, Linda, you're fired. I am really, truly honored to be here today. This is a great occasion for me to be able to share with you some things that are very, very hard to share sometimes. But in the last few years, as I have reached my, I'd love to say middle 60s, but I'm really apparently in the silver group, 67 going on 68. I'm taking it seriously, but I'm not having anything lifted or tucked yet. Or tucked, because I can't talk either. This event, Dianne is quite right. And by the way, you need to know that once you have the kind of leadership that this Alzheimer's Project has with our County Board of Supervisors, led by someone as dynamic. I don't care what everyone says about you, Dianne. I really like you. And Greg Cox co-sponsoring this, Dave Roberts, Nick, I'm just getting to know. It's an incredible force for you. Use it, welcome it, and help them in any way that you can, because I intend to do so myself. That's okay. It's all right. Save it for later. It's okay. Had my hair done for you yesterday also. Thank you, hairdressers everywhere. This event is putting a spotlight on important issues like Alzheimer's and related dementias. The county's leadership, as I've said, is highlighting this, and it's good news for all of us, and I do mean for all of us. My given topic was from heartbreak to hope. I have to admit that it goes hope, heartbreak, heartbreak, hope, and keeps going like that, and I know that many of you have experienced that. My journey has been full of blessings through life. In the years since I met my husband 36 years ago, not so great before that, really good after him. And I know a lot about heartbreak. I've tried to channel that pain, though, into positive moves. It isn't always easy. But today, I really do see a reason for hope, for families going through tough times with a loved one, for caregivers who need a helping hand themselves. And I'm not new to the game. I was, when I was a young girl back, so some of you are gonna know about this, some of you might not. I was a candy striper. Now, thank you, fellow candy stripers, villagers, and silver-haired people. The last time I talked about this, I slightly misspoke and said that I had been a candy stripper. Yes, there are people in San Diego who think that I will strip for candy. It's not true. I will strip for chocolate, but not just candy. No, please do not come rushing up to the stage offering me chocolate. I'm not doing it today. Dianne's here, and I'm really scared, not to mention Bonnie Dumanis, who would have me in handcuffs in about 2 seconds. Thanks for not bringing Bill Gore with you. I really appreciate it, Bonnie. But I do know what it's like to be a caregiver. For me, the battle against Alzheimer's and related dementias does go back decades. I lost my uncle, my aunt, probably my grandfather, and my most loved mother to Alzheimer's, and the effect was frankly devastating to me and the entire family. When Mom died, I struggled to try to determine what I could do to honor her, what I could do to also lift myself out of the abyss I found myself in, to do something that would lessen the pain of what I had felt and others before me had felt. It took a while, but I did arise from the pain and started to proactively, I hoped, seek solutions. My sweet late husband, Donald, and I, we funded research. We funded programs with caregiving projects. We built buildings for care. I joined the National Board of the Alzheimer's Association for several years. I participated in fundraising activities. I spoke out in any venue that would have me. I acted in a play that focused on Alzheimer's. They cast me as a diva. I can't imagine why they cast me as a diva, but I'm sure someone had a reason. I frankly tried everything that I could think of. And then I have to admit, the worst possible scenario for me emerged as my Donald fell ill to what we referred to as one stroke too many, and vascular dementia took over in the last months of his life. I learned what it was like to try to keep your loved one at home, what it was like to need nurses living with you, and how fortunate I was that Donald had worked so hard all his life that we had the funds to satisfy those financial needs. Donald was an extraordinary man, an inventor of medical devices, a heart valve that saved probably over 400,000 people's lives. That's a pretty good body of work. And he was mine. For 32 years, he was mine. We prospered, but the emotional toll of dealing with such illnesses is not solved or soothed by having those funds. Everyone is overwhelmed. Everyone suffers the anguish of losing and loss. Water, not vodka or gin. When Donald looked at me one day as I scurried around to help him get ready to face the day, he said to me, "You're so nice. Do you work here?" And I honestly thought I would crumble to the floor. There are no underpinnings to support you when you reach this point. Caring for Donald and watching him go through that was the most difficult thing I've ever done. And it was like a never-ending pain, and I know many of you understand that. Now, we found moments. You have to find moments. You have to find humor somewhere. We would declare what we called adventure days. We'd get Donald all ready, and we'd get him in the wheelchair. We'd roll him into the ramp van, and we'd go to Escondido for ice cream. Special shout out to North County folks. I live in North County. I know where you are. I know what you're doing, and thank you very much. But ice cream in Escondido was sensational. It was a whole day trek for us. We made a big deal out of it because it was a big deal. And it brought a smile to the face, and watching Donald point to whichever ice cream he wanted, or ice creams in the plural, made it worth that day. I found out that 5 people with Alzheimer's are cared for at home. 4 out of 5 people. Yeah, right, 5 people. Nothing wrong with me. Often by family members who are struggling with their own issues, with their own mental health, with their own physical problems. I'm also told that studies have shown that caregivers neglect their own health and diet, especially caregivers who provide assistance with the basic activities of daily living. Now, doctors will tell you, take some time for yourself, take some time. You cannot help your loved one if you aren't functioning yourself. So I finally listened to them. I tried it. I went off on a trip. And then, of course, the big, huge fire of 2007 happened when I was out in the middle of the ocean and Donald was in Palma Valley facing a fire evacuation. We spent a great deal of time and effort trying to get him out of there. One of my favorite nurses, Stella, was trying to convince Donald while it was still dark to get out of bed and get dressed. And at that time, Donald could talk, and he says, "Well, I don't you know, why are we getting dressed? It's still dark out. She says, well, we've got a special event to go to. And Donna said, well, how special is it? Okay, Stella, calling on everything she knew about Donald, said, well, it's up at the high school, and they've got chocolate chip cookies. And if we leave now, we can get there before everybody else and get to the cookies. Donald thought, yes, this is a great plan. She got him dressed. They went to the high school and were evacuated. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I'll use anything, and I do mean anything. Stripping for candy, chocolate chip cookies, whatever it takes to get the chocolate done. You notice there's a chocolate theme here? I'm surprised I'm not wearing a chocolate color today, but my executive assistant says I look lousy in brown, so I won't be doing that. As you know, many caregivers are older themselves. Many have limited resources to get the help they need, even if it's just an occasional break from their often truly grueling routine. And this isn't unique to Alzheimer's, you know that. Daily caregiving is hard, no matter what the disease is. And watching what Donald went through was tough, and sometimes he would put together sentences that he apparently thought were just terrific and made great sense. And I had no clue as to what he was saying. It was very frustrating. I would sit there and try to figure out what he was trying to say, and he would get upset with me because I wasn't participating in his conversation with me. Like all of you, you just want to sit down and cry because there isn't, what else do you do except cry at a point like that? And I'd think to myself, I can't do this anymore. But then I knew I always had to be strong for him. And as you all know, that's what keeps you staying there, doing it, keeping at it, and looking for the hope at the end of the tunnel. Let me share with you a Thanksgiving we had. This was when Donald was past being able to speak, and I was having to not just cut up, but to Cuisinart his food. Donald was wild about Thanksgiving, the smells of Thanksgiving turkey throughout the house. And so it was Donald, me, and Ernesto, our main nurse, and so I cooked up the whole Thanksgiving dinner. I mean everything, Portuguese stuffing from scratch. I mean, I really did it. So I served the meal, and I served Ernesto his dinner and a glass of wine. And then I Cuisinarted each one of the items for Donald so that they were separate in the colors, and it was very beautiful. But it was Cuisinarted food. Now, it didn't look so bad when I Cuisinarted enchiladas for some reason, but it wasn't looking good as a turkey dinner. So I put it in front of Donald. Donald looks at his plate, looks at Ernesto's. Yeah, oh yeah, you know where this is going. He looks back at his, and then he looks up at me with that, "Are you serious? He's got this, and I'm gonna eat this slop? Are you actually serious, lady?" And I couldn't help it. I had to laugh. So I went back into the kitchen, and I'm standing there thinking, okay, I'm trying. Ernesto came in. We heard this kind of clinking, and I looked around the corner, and there's Donald. And he's looking around. I don't know what he was looking at. There was nobody in the room. He reaches over, and he takes Ernesto's glass of wine, goes like this, puts it back. And I thought, you sweet, dear man. If it wasn't for the medications, I'd give you all the wine you wanted to drink. But it was a happy moment in the midst of enormous pain, and I took it. And I encourage all of you to take those moments because they are few and far between. And today I continue to do all that I can to help end the epidemic, and it is an epidemic of Alzheimer's. And hopefully, that's where hope comes back in again. Someday a diagnosis of dementia doesn't have to be a death sentence. And I've met with local research and seen the great work that they are doing. I've helped fund that work. And we're looking for a treatment, a cure, we're looking for anything we can get our hands on at this point. And I believe that there's a real chance for a medical breakthrough, and I've supported these efforts. By doing what I can, it takes away a little bit of the pain. And it's important to talk honestly about these subjects, the challenges of dealing with Alzheimer's. There's still a stigma around these diseases. We need to talk about them, and then we need to do something. Talk is terrific. Doing is better. Walking the talk is what we all have to do. I think that tackling killer diseases like this will take energy, focus, time, funds, and I believe our Alzheimer's Project will help chart the way. It's bringing together local care experts, the best research, along with the Alzheimer's Association and other organizations to address this disease and the other dementias. They tell me that 1 out of 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. I said it before, I'll say it again. I'm honored to be part of this project. I truly believe that projects like this can lead to improvements in care, and not just for those dealing with Alzheimer's. Maybe it could help steer us towards a cure, a treatment, some sort of respite that we're all looking for, because time does not stop. I learned a lot about who my friends were and weren't during those very, very dark years with Donald slipping away from me. You remember those people that come to your aid in the smallest of ways sometimes. I've had a lot of heartbreak, especially with Donald, but I want to keep in mind the given topic, which is heartbreak to hope. Okay, this is a hard part, so we're going to take this a little slower. And there was hope that I found in the comments of a stranger on the last cruise Donald and I attempted. And I say attempted because it was kind of my last-ditch effort. I don't know, I guess I was trying to nudge him or push him or shove him into coming back to me. I wanted him back. And I thought, okay, we'll go on a cruise. He loved cruising. Maybe being around the ocean and air and everything, this will do something. So our little entourage went aboard the ship, took 3 nurses, Donald in his wheelchair, a portable lift, I forget the name of it, Arjo lift, 5 suitcases with medical stuff, and then our regular suitcases. I booked 3 cabins so that one of the nurses would always be able to rest, the other 2 would be on duty, and I would be on duty. And we set out to sea. We didn't have as much of a throat problem then as we do now. And one night, I released all of the nurses together, and I said, okay, just one of you come back from the luau sober. I just need one of you sober to help me get Donald into bed. Unfortunately, apparently all of them were tone deaf that day. They came back so swacked they could barely walk. But it's okay, because we made it through. But as I had told them every step of the way for that 4.5 years, I always want my husband to look like he's getting ready to go out. I want him well-groomed. I want him dressed. Even if he's in bed, I want him to look the best that he can. I figured it was important for his dignity, and that was my job to make sure that happened. I never had to tell them twice. And remember, these were 3 strangers that I sat across the table from when Donald was finally released from the hospital the last time. I thought, wow, I don't know any of you people. You're going to be living in my home. And it was a little scary. But this night, it was Donald and me at dinner. We always fed Donald in the room because I didn't want him to be embarrassed trying to eat in front of, hundreds of people in a dining room on a ship. And it was a formal night, so he was in his tuxedo and I was dressed up. And I was trying, and somewhere during that dinner I thought, I have lost this battle. I can't get him back. This is it. We're really in the last times of this. So this is why this particular moment in time was very special. And the reason that I found the hope that I did in the comments from a total stranger on that cruise. I will never forget the kind words, the found hope that someone that had watched us throughout the cruise shared with me on that final night. The bottom line, the woman was traveling with her mother and was very frustrated that her mother wasn't responding as the woman had expected. Now, she had been noticing each night that Donald was well-dressed, groomed, and I talked to him like he understood every word and was participating in the conversation. She came over to our table, and I had been watching her watching me for all these nights, thinking, wow, a stalker or somebody. And this was before PBS, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm used to PBS stalkers. I can't believe so many of you watch PBS in your beds Sunday nights at 9 o'clock. Thank you, PBS fans everywhere. I was just curious as to how much of you had seen me on PBS. And she told me, this woman, this stranger told me that she had learned from me. She had learned from me that she wasn't being kind enough, that she wasn't being understanding, that she wasn't coping well enough, that I had given her hope that perhaps she could do better, that her mother would somehow know there was a change. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that I had finally passed the baton. I couldn't do any more for Donald than I had, and believe me, I had tried everything. But I helped this stranger in her relationship with her mother. I had given her hope, just as I had almost lost mine. I thank you for the privilege today, all of you, for sharing parts of my journey with you. We all have work to do, and I am here, and I always will be, for my mother, my husband, and for all of you, thank you.
Wow. Very moving story, and I thank you very much, Darlene, for taking your time to share with us your story of courage and hope. You brought humor to the tale, but you also resonated with each of us who's been on the caregiving journey. Thank you again. We're so glad to have somebody We're so lucky to have someone like Darlene a part of our community, making a true difference in this area and supporting our Alzheimer's project. Now, it's a great privilege for me to introduce another shining star. She's been such a great partner with us in Aging and Independent Services and with the county in the area of elder abuse, as well as consumer protection, identity theft. We're extremely happy to have her as our district attorney for another 4 years. Please join me in welcoming Bonnie Dumanis.
Thank you, Ellen, for that nice introduction. I sure am happy to be here today for this Aging Summit, and even happier to be your district attorney for the next 4 years. And since I'm becoming part of that silver tsunami, although you'll never know it, I have a great hairdresser, it is an important issue to all of us. As your district attorney, your safety is my primary focus. Nothing angers me more than criminals who prey on vulnerable members of our community. We value our partnership with Adult Protective Services and law enforcement to fight elder abuse and crimes against people with disabilities. We also have a very active consumer protection unit and another unit which is another unit that tackles committed crimes online. It's equally important for us to be part of preventing abuse of these crimes. You may have already been involved. We've done consumer protection days, which I think were the beginning of where something like this started, and many of you participated in that, and also to protect yourselves and your wallet events, which educated people on how to protect themselves physically and to avoid being a victim of scams and fraud. We look forward to working with Chairwoman Dianne Jacob, who I would say, Nick, if I were to compare her with anything, it would be a fierce warrior for her folks. She has done so much in so many areas, but in this area, she has led the charge, and we are grateful to work with her. And of course, the county's Aging and Independence Services Ombudsman program and Aging and Independence itself. And I want to thank all those that are responsible, and Ellen, for your team. But I have to give a special shout out, point of privilege here, to Denise Nellison, who helped put this together. Let's give her a round of applause. And by the way, since we all know about technology, please allow me just a quick photo, because I am learning technology even in my age, so that I can Facebook you all today. Smile for the camera. I'm not so sure that's coming out that well, but we'll get another picture on the way out. So one of the things we've been doing with the help of Supervisor Jacob and the entire Board of Supervisors is to increase our proactive approach to elder abuse and looking at assisted living care and those who are in them. And leading the way on this initiative, who's been at the forefront for many, many, many years in our office, is Deputy District Attorney Paul Greenwood, who heads our elder abuse prosecution unit. And for those of you women who are out there who fall in love with Paul Greenwood, please remember his wife is here. And we love Sue. So behind every man there is someone coaching him on. And Paul has a great family that he talks about when he gives his presentation. But he is very special to all seniors, not just here in the United States, but nationwide. He goes around and lectures and advises people on how to protect themselves and their wallets, and from physical abuse as well as financial scams. And he's already talking about a new project with me, so be ready. He has tips to share with you to help you avoid becoming a victim. And remember, if you have groups, he's always available to speak to them. I want to welcome my friend, the head of our elder abuse, the old New England, from the New England, Paul Greenwood.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Bless you. Thank you, Bonnie. And I did say this a few years ago. I think it's a great team from Massachusetts, the New England, and the Old England. It is. And I'm so grateful to Bonnie that she has allowed me for the last 18 years to pursue a passion that is still as relentless as ever. You know, I've been fortunate enough to speak in various venues around the country and even across the ocean, but I've never, ever spoken to such a large and diverse audience as this, and I pay tribute to all those organizers and planners from the Aging and Independent Services and all your sponsors, and this really is truly an event to be so proud of, so thank you so much, one and all. You know, whenever I finish a trial, jurors are encouraged to talk to the prosecutor and the defense attorney, and there are two questions that the jurors always seem to ask me more than any other, which is very scary because you really wonder what they were thinking about during your opening and closing passionate arguments. The first question they seem to ask me is, Mr. Greenwood, has anyone ever told you that you look like? And I don't have an answer for that. But the second question they ask me is, how come an Englishman ends up in San Diego prosecuting crimes against senior citizens? And that I do have an answer for, because you see, back in the late summer of 1973, I had just finished a summer camp during my recess from law school in England. I had been teaching football, and you call it soccer, in a camp in Illinois, and I decided to travel for 4 weeks, and I ended up in San Diego for 2 whole days, a Saturday and a Sunday. And I walked into a Baptist church in University City on a Sunday morning, looked around the room, and I didn't know anybody, and the only empty seat was sitting next to a gorgeous young lady. I sat down next to her, and I married her. So, and she's right over there. Darling, could you just stand up? This is my wonderful wife that Bonnie referred to. And Bonnie's so true. And people ask me all the time, how come you are so passionate and energized about what you do? And I says, because I'm married to the most wonderful woman. We've been married for almost 36 years. And she's blessed me with 2 children. And you didn't know you were going to get a family slideshow, did you? But Sue and I have entered a new phase of our lives. 2 years and 3 months ago, our daughter in London, because she married a Brit, go figure, and they blessed us with twins. And sometimes life, as Darlene mentioned, from heartbreak to hope, because in the very same week that we became grandparents to these 2 wonderful little babies, my father, we had to place into an Alzheimer's facility in the very same week. After 8 years of my mother caring for him, we realized it was too much, and we placed him in that facility in the very same week that these 2 wonderful. And have you ever known a grandfather to only show you 1 picture? No, okay, I'll just show you a couple more, okay? Okay, and then this is the latest one. They're 2 years and 3 months, as I say. People ask me again, how come you are driven? How come you're so passionate about this subject? 2 reasons, my mom and my dad. This was taken on July the 31st, 1948 in North London when they got married. I always show this photo to young law students, males, and I say, this is how you should dress on your first date. This was taken about 7 years ago on my mother's 83rd birthday, and she knows I show this photograph in America, and she always reminds me, Paul, remember, tell your audience that this photo was taken in our back garden. And then she pauses and she says, remember, a yard is a measurement. I'll just let that sink in, okay. 2 words describe my mother, Margaret Thatcher. Does that tell you, give you a glimpse of how my mother raised me? My mother is the most formidable lady I've ever met in my life. Margaret was the Iron Lady. My mother is the Steel Lady. This photo was taken last July 15th on my mother's then 90th birthday. I flew over for her 90th birthday. 2 days before her birthday, I'm sitting in her house and saying, Mama, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to eat, I'll take you there. She says, Paul, I'd like a French meal. I said, perfect. I know exactly the place, a French restaurant 15 miles away. And she said, no, I want a French meal. So what did we do on her 90th birthday? At 5:15 in the morning, she wakes me up with a tray of tea. At 6:15 in the morning, we're on the road, driving to a place called Dover. We put her car on the car ferry. We sail across the English Channel to Calais. I find a beautiful French restaurant. We sit there for 2.5 hours, and at the end of the meal, I ask my mother, what do you want to do now? She says, go home. So we make it all in reverse. We get back to her house at 6 p.m. I'm flat out, exhausted on the couch. What's my mother doing? Watering the plants. She is a fearless, wonderful, energetic lady that I am so proud to call Mum. And then there's my dad, who I've already mentioned. My dad is in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's. He can no longer speak. He can no longer recognize his bride of 66 years. He no longer knows who I am or my sister. He cannot eat solid food. Cuisinart is the menu of the day for my dad. But my dad will always be my hero. Because you see, when I was 8, I discovered something about my father that he was very reticent to tell me. He was a B-25 bomber pilot in World War II. He's one of many, many, many heroes that I look up to. Shot down on his 6th mission, rescued by a Yugoslav fisherman out of the Adriatic, put in a rest and recovery for about 72 hours, and then told Greenwood, there's another B-25, don't go mess this one up. And he is truly a hero. And I want to recognize any veterans, both on the front line and in supplies, men and women. Are there any here from World War II or the Korean War? If you are here, please would you stand up? Please would you stand up? Look at them. Thank you so much. You truly are our heroes. You are for me. I'm proud to be part of this wonderful office. I've been there for 21 years, and as Bonnie will tell you, many of us are career prosecutors. There's nothing else we ever want to do. My boss puts up with a lot from me. She gets very nervous whenever I speak in public. Because you see, as you can tell, I don't use notes. So please do not blame Bonnie for anything that comes out of my mouth, and anything can blame me. And many of you know you've received your jury summons, you come down to the Hall of Justice, and we thank you if you have already, or if you will in the future, become a juror. It is a vital part of your civic duty, and we thank you for doing that. I'm proud to be part of a 300-strong prosecutor team, but we are more than that. We have a wonderful support team as well. And I'm part of the Family Protection Division. We are innovative in San Diego, and one of the proudest programs that I'm proud of is this one. Look at this. This happened yesterday on our floor in Family Protection. Where else in a prosecutor's office could you have a dog party at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? They provide tremendous support for our vulnerable victims, both young and old, and we are so thankful for the community for their support in doing this. It was asked a long time ago of a politician, how do you measure the community in which you live and work? And the response was, look at the way you care for your very young, the elderly, and the defenseless. I'm proud to live in San Diego County. There's nowhere else in this country I would rather live, for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is, even though we are the 8th largest city in America, we have a small town, even a village feel, because we work together. There are very few turf battles, very few jurisdictional issues. We get along and we try to make it happen. But what I have also learned over 18 years is that sadly some crimes do not get the priority they deserve. And I've tried to make it my mission to look for those crimes that typically will not get reported or get investigated or get prosecuted, because those are the victims that deserve as much attention as anyone else. 18 years ago, I had no clue what elder abuse was because of the fact that I was raised by Margaret Thatcher. Why would I know that, right? And I was astonished to find out that it was a crime, it was happening everywhere, and it was going unpunished. And so we made a determination 18 years ago to do something about it, and thanks to Bonnie's leadership in the last 12 years, I've been able to keep pursuing that goal. But it is escalating, and you know, you've heard the demographics already. Look at this one. By the year 2030, there'll be over 70 million people in this country driving Buick motor cars. And I'm sorry to stereotype my victims, but 95% of all my victims own a Buick. 2% own a Camry. Another 2% own a 1993 white Cadillac de Seville with a tan interior. And 1% own a Dodge Magnum with 20-inch rims, and I'll tell you who that is later. But guess what? We're all living longer. And many of you in this room will live to be 100. And I don't know whether you will ever really seriously plan for that, but we should. But if you don't believe me, just turn on NBC 7 any weekday, and you will know that if you eat Smuckers for breakfast, you will live to be 100. But my favorite centenarian is this lady, and I hesitate to show you this, but here she is. She's English. She was 103 when she died. She outlived 3 of her primary care physicians. What else can I tell you? You know, I borrowed this poster from Illinois because unfortunately there's so much silence out there about the crime of elder abuse, and primarily it does come from the victims, and we understand why. There is embarrassment, there's fear of retaliation, there's fear of losing independence. The message that we want to send out today is, if you are a victim or if you know somebody who's a victim, please do not stay silent. You will receive from the County of San Diego a response that is understanding. No one's going to ridicule you. No one's going to suggest that because you've been ripped off in a scam, therefore we're going to take away your independence. The only person whose independence that Bonnie and I want to take away is the perpetrator's independence, nobody else. I've borrowed this, well, you know who this is. Mickey Rooney. We lost him about 4 weeks ago, and he became the unofficial spokesperson for victims of elder abuse crimes because he testified at the US Senate. He testified all over California and other places and said, if it can happen to Mickey Rooney, it can happen to anybody. And unfortunately, there's still some fallout that is occurring from the financial abuse that he suffered even after his death. The crimes we prosecute vary. Can you imagine 2 FBI agents walking up to a lady in Point Loma, an elderly woman tending to her roses, when suddenly she's approached by these 2 men, and you can tell they're from the FBI. You can always tell FBI, suit, sunglasses, and they walk with a swagger. It's a dead giveaway. And they show them their badge, and even one of them had his business card. See who his name is? Ross Walker. And he had a phone number. And yet they weren't who they said they were. They were crooks. And they fortunately for us, they didn't get away with a scam, because our victim, after calling this number after he left, called the police department in San Diego. Bless their hearts, they came out immediately and discovered that this Ross Walker was a crook. The good news about the story is that when the crooks agreed to come back the next day to count out her money that they had asked her to withdraw from her bank, the real FBI were there. And they brought me the case, and we were able to prosecute it. But it just shows all of us, just because somebody shows you a badge and a card, don't always take them at face value. We just can't afford to do that these days. And before I give you my top 10 tips, I just want to share this one piece, because unfortunately, this is one of the biggest problems we face in our county. It's the son. And I feel I can talk about him because I am a son. And this is who he is. Aged between late 30s and late 40s, living at home with his widowed mother. He's either divorced, come back to live at home because he says he can't pay child support and alimony and rent, or he's single and he's never ever left home, or he's just returned because of this new early release policy out of jail. In every single case that I've prosecuted over the last 18 years, he's lazy. And whenever I talk to his mother, I say, how come your son, 46 years of age, isn't working? She says, he tells me he has a medical condition. I say, let me guess, he's got a bad back. She said, how did you know? I said, it comes from sitting on your sofa 8 hours a day watching your television. And I know I'm being a little cynical, but it's true. And they are also addicted to either drugs, typically meth, amphetamine, alcohol, it's either beer or vodka, or gambling, or a mixture of all three. And because that costs money, they feed their addiction off their mother by getting her money, by stealing her jewelry. And sometimes some of these young men have been diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia, but refuse to take medications. So we often get cases like this of just bruising on the arm of an older widowed mother, which is a telltale sign. So if you know a friend who's a widowed mother who has a son living at home with them that I've just described, and you see her with bruises like this or this, do the right thing and call Adult Protective Services, and they will treat that person with respect and dignity. But we cannot stay silent. So the top 10 tips that I am sharing with you now are based upon my last 18 years of the privilege of prosecuting crimes. They are based upon actual crimes that I've prosecuted and that I learn from every single time I go to court. Tip number 1 is very important. Please choose a caregiver with great caution. Never through Craigslist, never through an advert in the newspaper, only through a bonded, insured agency. Because unfortunately, there's still no law in California requiring caregivers, unless they go through in-home support services, to go through a background mandatory check. So some agencies are sloppy, and they rely upon the caregiver to give them true information. I've had to remind caregiver proprietors that, guess what? Felons lie. I know that's a shock to all of us. But when presented with an application form and they're asked, have you ever been convicted of a felony, they write no. So we need to do more. The city of Napa is the only city in the whole of California that requires every single caregiver of a senior citizen within the city limits to go through a mandatory background check. I hope that Bonnie and I and others can persuade our city government to adopt the same ordinance, which, interestingly enough, was drafted in San Diego. I went up to Napa and I sold it to them, I mean, without money, of course, and they took it and ran with it. But we still have to do that. So please check very carefully as to who you hire, because if you hire the wrong one, it can have fatal consequences. This is Jack Parks. He was murdered by his own caregiver in East County. And I had the privilege of pursuing justice for the victim, Jack Parks, who was 98 when this photo was taken. And his now murderer caregiver is in prison for life, second-degree murder. And then there we have this heroic gentleman from Pearl Harbor, survivor, who was found in his own kitchen by a deputy sheriff who responded to Adult Protective Services' call for a welfare check, and was found laying in filth in his own kitchen. The caregiver is now in prison. And then there's this lady who was in Nevada on parole, and she came to San Diego, couldn't work at Nordstrom's, so she went and worked for an agency and lied to them and became a caregiver and stole and starved almost to death my victim. Tip number 2, ladies, the most important thing that you can take away today from me is this, because the number 1 item that is stolen from senior citizens in San Diego is jewelry. And I finally figured out why. Ladies, you have so much of it. And it's small, and it's easily converted into cash. But we've got to keep it locked up at all times. Please, if you haven't got it locked up, and if you don't have an inventory of your jewelry, you've got to go and get it photographed and list it, and then keep that separate. These ladies were my victims in a recent case that I prosecuted. Wonderful, wonderful ladies. They all live in an assisted living facility in La Jolla. They were all victims of a jewelry theft by the same person, an employee, a maintenance man. And whenever they had a problem with their faucets or their cable TV, they would call him up and he would say, "Oh, Doris, why don't you just go downstairs and have a cup of coffee? I'll fix this in no time." Oh, he fixed it all right, but he also took their jewelry as well. But out of all these victims, only 2 of them could tell me exactly what was stolen. The others could give me a rough description, but they didn't have an inventory. But I must tell you, when you have a formidable force of victims lined up in a courtroom like this, guess what happens to the defendant? He caves in. And with no prior convictions, he pled guilty to 10 years state prison for stealing from these ladies. Because I won't begin to tell you what some of these ladies suggested should be his punishment. I'll give you a clue. They suggested stringing him up by a certain part of his anatomy. But anyway, please always use a shredder. Before you throw anything away that contains information about yourself into the trash, always shred it. Because unfortunately, we do have people in this county called dumpster divers who are sifting through our trash looking for information that they can use against us. Please also protect your incoming and outgoing mail. One of the biggest culture shocks for me was the mailbox. I had never seen a mailbox before coming from England. And whenever I remember when we purchased our first home in Penasquitos, I stood out on the pavement and I said to my wife, "Darling, what is that wooden post with 4 tin cans on it?" And I started playing with one of the flaps. And she said, "That's where our mail goes to." And I couldn't believe that my mail was going to go into an unprotected mailbox. So I said, well, we're going to have to do something about that. So we rented a P.O. box. It's the best value in town. Go to the U.S. Post Office and rent a P.O. box for $27 for every 6 months. It's a bargain. And I love it because whenever people ask me, where do you live? I can say I live in a box. I love that. Oh, by the way, just one more tip about that. Please, if you're ordering new checkbooks, please would you collect them from the bank or the credit union personally. Don't rely upon the mail because sometimes they send it by courier. And have you noticed that couriers these days are getting more lazy? 10 years ago, when a courier brought you a parcel and you weren't home, they would leave a postcard on your doorstep. And you'd have to drive over to the depot to pick it up. What do they do now? Put it on your doorstep and wait for you to come home. And the crook drives by and steals it off your doorstep. So please try to not do that. So that's my message. Thinking about renting a P.O. box. Tip number 5, please consider doing a credit search regularly on yourself. Because as you will hear from one of our great workshops this afternoon, Brendan Macchione is a brilliant, brilliant prosecutor, and he has a workshop about identity theft. I hope you will go to that if you can, because he will tell you about what's going on with identity theft in our county. It's important that we all know what's going on. And if you're not going to be asking for another credit card or apply for new loans, consider freezing your credit so nobody can actually tap into it. Talk to your financial institution about how to go about doing a credit search. And if you're comfortable, go online and you can actually do a free credit report on yourself. Please, if you don't already sign up for it, I urge you to use caller ID for 2 reasons. Number 1, isn't it great to be able to tell people you're psychic? I always love when my mother calls me from England. It's 8 p.m. in England. It's 12 noon at my office, and we have caller ID on our phones. And I see my mother's phone number, and before she can say anything, I say, "Hello, Mum, how are you?" And she says, "How did you know it was me?" I said, "Because it rang with an English accent, Mother." She still hasn't figured that one out. But the more important reason why we need caller ID is if this afternoon, when you've left this great symposium, you're at home and the call comes in and it says unknown, out of area, or private, it should immediately put you and I on our guard. Because probably, and I do say probably because that's what the crooks are using these days, is the telephone. Probably it's from a crook disguising himself or herself as somebody else. And please do not be afraid to hang up, or do not be afraid to screen your calls before picking up, just so that you know who it is before you answer the phone. And what about those annoying telemarketers? And this is why I always say, don't blame Bonnie, blame me, okay? I love the whistle. And I think a whistle is a very effective form of offensive weapon. So you blow that whistle as hard as you can down the phone, you will give that scammer earache. And that is a good thing. Number 7, I'm sorry to burst our bubbles, but we will never, ever, ever win the Canadian lottery. So don't believe the guy on the phone. Please, it's impossible. You'll never, never win it. But unfortunately, even though I say this all over the county, every week we get a new victim. Please don't fall foul to this scheme. We have retired professors. I just had a retired Catholic priest. We've got very educated people who fall foul to this. Do not allow yourself. If you get a letter from Pepsi, be suspicious. If you get a letter from Pepsi telling you you're the latest millionaire, tear it up. It ain't going to happen. Inside that letter is a check from virtual Las Vegas. Shred it. Because if you don't, and if you play along with this lead, you are going to get scammed and you're going to lose money. This man, look at this, a man from Spring Valley. He was given in the mail a check for $299,000. A day later, the crooks called him up and said, "Terribly sorry, sir, we sent you too much. Can you wire back $150,000? He did. He lost his life savings in an instant. And how many grandmothers do we have out there besides my wonderful wife? Grandmas, I beg you, when you get that call tomorrow afternoon and all he says is, "Grandma," hang up, okay? I'm not serious really, but if he tells you he's in jail in British Columbia or in Mexico City, that's when you hang up, because it's not your grandson. I promise you that. Particularly as he's going to tell you he needs $5,000 bail money, and he doesn't want you to tell mum and dad because they'll tell his employer. It's a scam. You are not going to let that happen to you. He'll either ask you to go to Walmart and get MoneyGram to wire the money, or the latest thing that the crooks are using is Green Dot prepaid cards out of CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. So I have 2 responses for you grandmas out there. Number 1, your grandson will never, ever be in jail. Or, number 2, if he is, let him stay there. Exactly, Bonnie. Tip number 8, and I say this for our unsighted elderly population, our blind colleagues, because I had a case where an 85-year-old grandmother was blind. She allowed her 25-year-old granddaughter to move in with her. Unknown to the grandmother, the granddaughter was a heroin addict. And the granddaughter stole her grandmother's ATM debit card. And she withdrew all her grandmother's money over a series of 7 months. When the monthly bank statement arrived, the grandmother relied upon the granddaughter to tell her everything was fine. And it was only after the $55,000 had gone that the bank called the grandmother, and that's when she discovered her loss. And we never were able to recover it. So please, have somebody else look over your bank statement if you have eyesight problems. Because by looking at it very quickly, within a minute, you can tell that something is wrong and you need to do something about it. Number 9, don't assume that the friendly handyman down the street is licensed. Always check with the wonderful Better Business Bureau and the Contractor State License Board. Get 3 estimates. Don't pay more than 10% of the contract price as a holding deposit, or $1,000, whichever is less. Get it in writing, pay by check, and keep your camera handy. Because if I was to be a crook, isn't this a perfect name to be called? Father and Daughter's Christian Construction Company. Perfect. And you put it on a Buick outside a church parking lot, you're going to get a victim. I promise you. And that's what happened. And this guy went over and got my victim to sign a check for $1,300. She thought that was the whole price. But later in the afternoon, he came back and got her to write out another check. It was a scam. But she was basically held hostage by this unlicensed contractor and his cronies, and she lost all this money. And final tip, please always, ladies and gentlemen, have a second line of defense at your front door. Don't ever open your door unless you already know who's coming, unless you are certain who it is. And if they say they're from the water board and they have to check your plumbing, don't let them in. Or from the utility company, don't let them in. They don't do it that way. Please, please, very, very careful. So watch out for these officials. Because you see, I have 4 wonderful victims from Mount Miguel Covenant Village, but they fell foul to my rota-rooter suspect. This is, by the way, this is not the crook. This is some poor fellow I borrowed from the internet. But the crook dressed up as a rota-rooter plumber and got his way into their homes and stole jewelry and cash from them. And then there's this Sandy. She's the one that drives the Dodge Magnum with 20-inch rims. She's my heroine. She's an incredible lady, but she will tell you, don't ever let somebody in, because she let in the Kirby vacuum salesman cleaner who kidnapped her and kept her hostage for 26 hours in the trunk of her own car. So some final tips in my final minute. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not leave your purse in your shopping cart. And I know you shop at Trader Joe's and at Whole Foods, because I do my research. But please, when you go there tomorrow, do not put your purse in that cart, because someone's going to try to distract you while their colleague is pulling your wallet out of your purse. If you're traveling this summer, please do not put your home address on your luggage label. That is an advertisement to anybody that you are going to be leaving for a week or more. Put a friend or somebody else's address on there. So if it gets lost, at least you know where it's going to be recovered. I always put 330 West Broadway on my luggage label. So Bonnie, if ever you see suitcases, it's mine, okay? All right. And if somebody offers you a living trust update with a free lunch, be very, very careful. Do not go to that seminar until and unless you've checked it out with your own attorney, CPA, or tax advisor. So if you think that you or somebody else you know may be a victim, this is what I want you to do. I can't speak highly enough about our wonderful adult protective services, but this is their number, 1-800-510-2020. Call that number. If you are not mandated, you can remain anonymous. Go with your gut feeling. Silence is not golden. So the message I have for every senior citizen in this room, but throughout the county, and this is coming from Bonnie and me, we have respect and honor for you. We are committed as a team, not just in the DA's office, but together to seek justice. And we prosecute, I love the words that begin with the same letter, passion, purpose, and perseverance. My final comment before I sit down. 10 years ago, before my father got Alzheimer's, he said on a phone call, "Paul, your mother and I are taking a ski vacation." And I was shocked. You know what he meant by that? Spend, kids, inheritance. And they were going on a cruise. If you are still mobile, you have a ski vacation this year. You go on a cruise just like Darlene did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul, for being such an incredible partner and such a staunch advocate and fighter against elder abuse. Now, I would like to welcome another strong supporter of programs and services related to safety and caregiving. Over the past 2 years, he has been particularly involved in assisting grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Do we have any of you here today? We have a great event coming up on June 21st in our Chula Vista location. You can hear more about that shortly. He has been involved in assisting grandparents who've been raising their grandchildren, and this was a group that has been largely ignored until he stepped up to the plate. Please welcome our supervisor for District 1 and our co-sponsor, along with Chairwoman Jacob, of our Aging Summit this year. Thank you. Thank you so much, Supervisor.
Thank you, Ellen. And I have to start off by saying that I'm Greg Cox, and I'm a senior. I didn't want you to think that this silver hair was something that I put on just for today. I had the honor of being appointed to the Coastal Commission in September of last year, and I was we have a 3-day meeting going on in Huntington Beach, which started yesterday. So I came down this morning. I'm going to be here for this conference and then head back up there. But I couldn't avoid not coming down to this event here today. To think that between this room and the overflow room across the way there and up in Escondido, we have over 2,000 seniors that are here for the very valuable information that you're going to be getting from these great speakers that you've had so far this morning and this next speaker and the panels this afternoon. I couldn't not be here. You know, the County of San Diego, with our Health and Human Services Agency, and you had a chance to hear Nick a little earlier this morning, has really been working very, very hard over the last few years to put together this 10-year program that we call Live Well San Diego. And it's all predicated on 3 numbers, 3, 4, 50. The fact that there's 3 bad behaviors that some of us, myself included, sometimes exhibit, like that 100-year-old lady that was smoking a cigarette, the use of tobacco products, not good. Lack of exercise, not good. Poor nutrition, not good. Those 3 bad behaviors lead to 4 chronic conditions: heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and respiratory problems that last year in San Diego County accounted for over 57% of the deaths in San Diego County, 2/3 of which could be preventable if people would pay attention to those 3 bad behaviors. So the reason we're all here today is to really focus on the fact that prevention and education equals wellness. And not only do we have over 2,000 participants, we've got 82 exhibitors that are going to be having their booths set up in different locations. And to think all of this started just 16 years ago, 1998, through the leadership of our chairwoman, Dianne Jacob, and at that time our supervisor, Pam Slater-Price. And to see how far this has come from the first one some 16 years ago is truly amazing. This is something that is one of the best well-attended programs that the county puts on each and every year. And I commend each and every one of you for being here today and participating in the 15 workshops that are going to be going on later this morning and into the afternoon. One of the topics that we're going to be hearing about today is that of providing care for a family member. Being a caregiver is sometimes something that almost all of us, I think I can safely say all of us, will have to deal at some point in our lives, sometimes maybe 2 or 3 times during the course of our lives. In our county, there are over 650,000 caregivers that are providing care to their loved ones. Family members who are doing whatever it takes to help a loved one, from providing transportation to providing hands-on care. I have a little bit of personal experience with this, as my wife and I are helping to care for her father, who has Alzheimer's disease, and we know the hard work that it takes. And I very much certainly empathize with all of you that are here today, that are caregivers, and certainly encourage you to keep up the great work that you're doing. One of our keynote speakers today, or our keynote speaker today, I should say, has spent her life helping us understand more about humanity and about ourselves. How we are the same or different. What motivates us? How are we impacted by life's challenges, by our stages of life, and by other people? There's no doubt she was strongly influenced by studying under anthropologist Margaret Mead at Columbia University. Gail Sheehy has honed her study of the human condition through many years as a journalist and writer, working for the New York Herald Tribune and New York Magazine, as well as writing for such publications as Vanity Fair, Cosmopolitan, McCall's, Glamour, and many, many more. Gail is probably most widely known for her best-selling book, Passages, Predictable Crises of Adult Life, where she points to major emotional and social changes that we encounter as we enter middle age. In the book, she encourages people to confront those milestones so that they can grow stronger as human beings. Gail has used the Passages theme to explore certain topics more thoroughly for both men and women, and in 2011 published Passages in Caregiving, Turning Chaos into Confidence. This book was the result of her own experiences being a caregiver for her husband, Clay Felker, during his 17-year battle with cancer. Again, she wanted to share what she had learned during such a tough time, and that, as she said, she was, quote, uncertain that I would survive to tell the tale, unquote. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? We are honored to have her here today to share her lessons with us. Please welcome Gail Sheehy.
Good morning. Oh, I'm glad you spoke back. I don't call you seniors. I don't call myself a senior. I prefer seasoned women and men, right? Seasoned women and men. Okay. We've been marinated in life experience, right? We're sweet, sometimes sour. We're flavorful. We're tasty. You need us. You need us every day. Okay, I want to extend first my respect and heart to all the caregivers in the audience, not the ones we've been hearing about from Paul, but all the rest of the family caregivers and the professionals who are really the backbone of our fractured healthcare system. We provide billions in care every year, mostly unrewarded financially, but rewarded by the gratefulness of our families. I couldn't have survived 17 years of being the caregiver for my husband through 4 different bouts of cancer, but I hasten to say we also had wonderfully long respites between our 3 victories over cancer that gave us some of the best years of our lives. But I couldn't have really survived without advice from other caregivers and help from home health aides and the support and compassion of nurses and social workers and those who provided palliative care and hospice care near the end. So please stand, all you who are caregivers, family caregivers, and professionals. I know you're out there. Thank you. Now, stay standing, because you've all been sitting now for, what, a couple of hours. And so I'm going to give you a little break. I'd like to share with you something that helps me when I feel overwhelmed by my responsibilities. Some of you are familiar with it, ancient Chinese movements called Qigong. So they're designed to help you relax, be healthy, find your inner peace. And we can follow my teacher, Carrie, who was doing these movements with me last week in Central Park. Take off your shoes. Stand up. Tony, can you run our little video?
Tap up the inside of your leg and down the outside. Up the inside and down the outside. Up the inside and tap on your groin and the abdomen. Tap under your arm, down the side of your body, and up to the thymus line of your chest. Under your arm and up to your chest. Down the underarm to your palm, up the back of your arm and tap on your shoulder. Down the underside of your arm, up the back of your arm and tap on your shoulder, and relax your shoulder and neck. Other side, wake up the lymph glands, the gallbladder meridian, and tap on the thymus. Down the underside of your arm to your palm, up the back of your arm to your shoulder, down the underside, and up the back, and tap on your shoulder. Tap on your kidneys, running your hands up and down either side of your spine. And the other ear. And then shake out any tension from your body. And you can shake as long as you want. be 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 10 minutes. Letting go of your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, releasing your neck, all the muscles of your back and your hips, energizing your lungs, your liver, gallbladder, spleen, stomach, all the organs of the abdomen, and then focus on your legs and let go. Feel the vibration in your thighs, your knees, your calves. With your thumbs together, inhale, lift your lungs, expand, and fill your lungs with the morning energy, the oxygen. And exhale, thumbs together. Focus on the meridian from the clavicle up the underside of your arm to your thumb, and exhale. Inhale, and exhale. In, out. Lift your arms and let your palm connect to the earth energy. Turn your palm up and connect to the heaven energy. Grab the big ball of energy and bring it down in front of your face. Hands in prayer pose in front of your chest. And feel the energy coming in from the top of your head, the heaven energy, and the earth energy coming in through the root at the bottom of your foot. And fill your body with this beautiful energy. Turn your hands out at 45 degrees and share the energy with your loved ones, with your special friends and family. Turn your hands out to 90 degrees and share the energy with your whole community, your city, your county, your state, your country, and all the people of the world. And point your fingers down and return the energy to the earth. The earth that gives us so much stability, nourishment, and peace. And lower your hands to your sides.
I'm so glad to see you all did that. That's wonderful. We hear a lot today about the joys of our longevity revolution, the bonus years. I love to take a look at senior dating sites. Here's a post from Foxy Lady. Sexy, fashion-conscious, blue-haired beauty, 80s, slim, 5'4", used to be 5'8". Searching for a sharp-dressing companion, matching white shoes and belt, a plus. Mint condition, male, 1932, high mileage, some hair, many new parts, including hip, knee, cornea, and valves. Isn't in running condition, but walks well. And then memories. I can usually remember Monday through Thursday. If you can remember Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, let's put our two heads together. But there's another side to the longevity revolution, family caregiving, and especially long-term care, and they have become a predictable crisis for Americans in midlife. Excuse me, I'm going down one floor. I can't get my shoes back on. Our initiation usually starts with the call. It's a call about a fall or a cardiac arrest, or the call is about your dad. He's run a red light and he's hit somebody, but he doesn't quite remember how it happened. And you don't remember, you don't know, is it his eyes or is it his mind? And you're kind of afraid to ask because you're pretty sure you're not going to win the argument over the car keys anyway. For me, the call began with the words, "It's not benign." My father, my husband had an oncologist. He'd had one biopsy a year before, it was benign. And suddenly, the voice was the oncologist. It took me a moment to find my own voice, and I said, but a year ago when you did the biopsy, it was totally fine. And he interrupted me and he said, I know, the pathologist recut the old slides. It's cancer. It was cancer, and it's back. Well, after weeks of Googling disease sites and consulting with doctors who offered very different opinions and listening to conflicting advice from friends, it began to dawn on me that my life was also radically changing. And that's the first hurdle, because most of us take quite a while to recognize that we have a new role, a role that today demands professional level skills. Family caregiver is a job almost nobody applies for. You don't expect it. Most of us aren't prepared or trained. One busy entrepreneur who was in the middle of a conference like this told me, you know, she said, when I got the call that my mother had fallen and was immobilized, I thought I had 9 months to prepare for the care of my first child. I had about 9 hours to prepare for caring for my mother. It's 1 in 4 American families. Somebody is performing the role of caregiver for another adult who used to be independent. And the average family caregiver today is a woman who's in her late 40s, holds a paying job, and spends at least 20 hours a week on this role, often at the expense of attention to her teenage children, her mate, her friends, and certainly her own health and social engagement. And more than half of Americans, caregivers, hold full-time jobs. So the responsibility is pretty overwhelming. And studies have shown that the caregiver spends at least an average of 4.5 years on this role, with the needs escalating. And we all feel like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I make this work? And the answer is, you're not doing anything wrong. Your presence as a family member who will act as a fearless advocate is a matter of survival. The secret of caregiving success took me years to discover, and that is quite simply, we cannot do it alone. No one can do it alone. We must create a circle of care. So I was honored when AARP named me their ambassador for caregiving, and they sent me around the country to find and film caregiving families who were finding creative solutions. I share their winning strategies in my book, Passages in Caregiving. But after interviewing hundreds of family caregivers and families, I began to understand that this journey is not linear. It's not like the progression of adult development stages. It's circular. And I really saw this when I was at a retreat for caregivers, and I found myself walking a labyrinth. A labyrinth is often confused with a maze, but a maze is a kind of a joke. It's meant to trick you with many different paths. A labyrinth has one well-defined path that will eventually lead us to the center and then back out again if you have patience and faith. So I've used the concept of a labyrinth as a metaphor to make sense of the chaos of caregiving, because there are what I think of as 8 different turnings that many of us go through. So I'd like to show you a little DVD to make this visual for you. I had an inspiration while walking a labyrinth. You go in circles. You come upon sudden twists and turnings. It's a lot like the surprises and complications we face on our journey as caregivers. A labyrinth has one true path. It can eventually lead us to the center, but you can't see the path ahead. It's not predictable. Walking a labyrinth is just like moving through the twists and turnings of long-term care for a loved one. It requires patience and faith. Sometimes you double back, but you're not going backwards. You're just revisiting a previous challenge, but this time you'll know it differently. Walking a labyrinth is not a should. It's a spiritual exercise. Tune out the mind chatter and tune into your intuitive self. The goal is not to get to the center as quickly as possible to find the answer. There is no one answer to the challenge of caregiving. This is a pilgrimage to the center of our being. Once we reach the center, we may touch the depths of despair, but here we can also find our way to acceptance. We accept that our loved one is not going to return to the old, normal, independent person he or she once was. Here, we accept both the inevitability of death and the promise of our comeback to life. That is the other half of the journey, coming back. The path of transformation, back to a life of your own and a new self. The first turning I think of as shock and mobilization. You get the call, you don't really see yourself yet as a caregiver, you're just trying to get through the day, and you're speaking with doctors, but when you're dealing with more than one doctor, as you usually are in this age of specialists, you get a second opinion, a third opinion, and you have no idea how to choose between them. And I learned that the most important thing is to find a doctor you trust, who seems to have the largest perspective, and then ask that doctor if he or she will be your medical quarterback. Medical quarterback. There aren't a lot out there, but the more demand that comes from us, the more doctors are beginning to fall into line. And here are the key questions. Will you help us decide on a care plan? Will you help us assemble the care team, which includes non-medical people, which includes a nutritionist, includes a physical therapist, may include acupuncturists, and help us call the plays. You need one person that you can go back to and his or her team. So you may be mostly in touch with nurse practitioners who can be your best friends. And finally, will you help us plan for aftercare? Because the treatment always has consequences. Dealing with pain, setting up rehab, and training the caregiver. I know San Diego County is pioneering in better care coordination in the transition from hospital to home, which has always been the biggest gap of all. And I'm so thrilled to be in the county that is taking the lead in this new work. And I'm hoping to come back and do a story about the work that you are doing. Good health professionals welcome a caregiver's help. If you have a doctor or a team that kind of shuts you out, go elsewhere. Because you are the key person in the team. You know the person who needs care better than anybody, and you are the best feedback to the team. And let them know you'll help. You'll do research. And when the immediate crisis is over, you settle into the second turning I call the new normal. Everyone else goes back to their daily routines, but you are on alert, and you have to get used to it. And once you do and get accustomed to the new normal and know you can deal with it, things may go along very well for a while, months, even years. And then at some point, there's a third stage, boomerang. Almost inevitably, there'll be another crisis of some sort. And this time, you know it better, and you're a little smarter about how to galvanize and get others to help. With us, it took another shock after Clay's first diagnosis and treatment for cancer to catapult us into a dramatic life change. This was 2 years after the first diagnosis. We found ourselves sitting in another doctor's office who was telling my husband, okay, you have a low-grade non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's indolent. The median survival rate at your age is 10 years, but since you have no symptoms and early treatment with any drug doesn't usually improve your lifespan, I'm going to leave you alone. Well, we sat there thinking, what? No prescription, no help? And he said, no. He said, my advice, my prescription is for you to go out and do something wonderful, something risky that you've dreamed about that you wouldn't have done without this crisis, and do it together. Well, we were stunned. We walked out of that office on a cloud of reprieve, but clouds don't hold you up very long, so we had to act. But it took us a year to figure out how to follow that prescription, because what my husband had to do was to do something that I think anybody who's had a life-threatening illness needs to engage in, which is to ask yourself, what is it about the work or the primary occupation of your life that gives you real pleasure, stripped of title or setting? Where is the meaning in it? And then try to think of how you can put that into a different format. It took us a year. We spent most Sundays taking a long walk in a nature preserve or Central Park, And finally, one day, my husband got the eureka moment and said, I know what I love to do. I love to identify and shape young talent. He was a magazine editor. And that allowed him to think about being a teacher. He'd never thought about that before. And at the same time, a number of his coworkers, disciples, colleagues, whose careers he'd started or fostered, secretly worked on, in a working group, to brainstorm how to get him back into action and going to different colleges and universities to talk about what he could do. So one day, we got a call from the University of California, Berkeley, asking him to come out and talk about starting a program teaching students how to make magazines in the journalism school. Well, that was an amazing experience for us. All we had to do was to tear up lives that we'd been spending 20 years building in the journalism and literary profession in New York and move across the country. But we got to move to California. Can't complain with that. We did have to move into the last faculty apartment, one bedroom, brick and board bookcases again, arguing over the one bedroom. But then we found a wonderful running track overlooking San Francisco Bay, no horizons. We found Pete's Coffee Shop, the first one, down the street, and got to sit outside reading our New York Times and drinking our cafe latte in short sleeves. So we were young again. We were in love again. We started life over again. It was a second adulthood. So there are ways in which the sudden impact of disease can lead us to finding richer, more meaningful lives. And that mind-body approach to healing worked for us. That lymphoma went away, and it never came back. The next turning is, I can't do this anymore. And usually caregivers get there in about the second or third year. That's the phrase that people hear on hotlines. I can't do this anymore. And you can't. Just saying those words is a signal that you have to drop out for at least 1 hour a day, every day, to do anything but caregiving. And one of the best things you can do is to call a girlfriend or a man friend to meet you and go for a walk and talk. Really, in a recent study at Stanford, they found that talking with a friend for an hour gives more benefit than going to the gym. So you can, beg off about going to the gym and tell yourself you're giving yourself better well-being. Because when you're feeling lonely and tired and resentful, really connecting with someone you trust and love changes your whole hormonal system. And if it's not a girlfriend, maybe it's your daughter or your son or a favorite co-worker, or just call up your grandchild and have a few minutes of talking baby talk. As ambassador for AARP, ambassador of caregiving for AARP, I interviewed many different kinds of family caregivers, people with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, stroke. But I found, not surprisingly, that the caregivers of loved ones with Alzheimer's disease are often the most dedicated. Many escalate to the turning point I call playing God. They come to believe it's up to them to protect their loved one. They become hypervigilant. They can't bring themselves to leave their loved one alone for fear that something will happen. But sadly, they're setting themselves up for a great fall, because the one hard truth about caregiving is no one can do it alone. I was fortunate that a veteran caregiver told me one day, you know what, Gail? There is a God, but you ain't it. It becomes imperative to create a circle of care. And by that I mean growing a network of family, friends, neighbors, veteran caregivers, and colleagues from work. Maybe finding college students who are studying geriatric care or health sciences, or who might be able to gain credit for volunteering to help a family caregiver. And it may be wise to hire a geriatric care manager who can help you set up a care team and teach you how to act as a manager. And even if you do a 3-hour consult with a geriatric care manager, and it's costly, it might be $150 or $200, the amount of information that they can give you in that 3 hours may do wonders for your job as a manager. But first, you have to come to believe that you're deserving to ask for help. So many caregivers don't think they should or could, but only then can you anticipate caregiver burnout before it takes you down. And Keith Wolford is a good example. He's a firefighter in Oregon. He was used to saving people from death. Big, strong, strapping guy with the biggest mustache I've ever seen. With strangers, he could protect himself with emotional detachment. But he soon learned when his young wife was diagnosed with someone you love who has Alzheimer's, it's entirely different. So let's take a look at how Keith handled it. Keith Wolford is a rescuer by nature. As a firefighter for 26 years, he saved a lot of people. His early first marriage ended in divorce, but he found a new life in his 40s with a lively Irish woman who shared his love of fishing and motorcycling. Daphne caught that big marlin.
She wrestled that in all by herself. She wouldn't take any help. She was always independent.
Did you ever imagine you'd spend these years as a caregiver?
I never imagined being a caregiver at all. I mean, I kind of did that in my profession, helping people my whole life, and never realized that I would be in that position, being a caregiver in my own home.
With Daphne, it was a creeping crisis.
Yes, we went to a lot of doctors initially trying to figure out what this problem might be, and from her general practitioner up through the neurologist that we saw, all said that it was not Alzheimer's until we reached the medical people that deal with it on a frequent basis. They did a spinal tap and come to the conclusion that she had the protein in her system that pointed to Alzheimer's.
That had to be a huge blow.
It was devastating. It was devastating for both of us.
Tell me about this baby.
Well, Gail, it's a 1959 Corvette.
Keith Wolford recently made the extremely difficult decision to put his young wife, who is suffering from Alzheimer's, into a nursing home. He visits her daily, but now he has half days to himself. Keith has reached what I think of as the center of the labyrinth of caregiving. It's where we may touch the depths of despair, but where the struggle of acceptance begins. Keith, I know you're faced now with the reality that your wife, Daphne, isn't going to get better, and you've put her in a nursing home, a very difficult decision. But now you're in the position to begin coming out of the labyrinth, coming back, finding a new life of your own. Are you finding a new path?
Well, the hobbies that I've always enjoyed are still there, and that I've just basically had to put them on hold. Her and I both enjoyed the car hobby, just the whole experience of dealing with old cars and enjoying them.
I just want to pat it, or drive it.
Well, there you go.
Can I drive
do that, certainly. Yeah,
Ooh,
we'll put you right in the driver's seat here.
Okay. These cars seem like your transport to joy, but they also connect you to Daphne.
They do. They make a real good connection to Daphne because we always enjoyed the hobby of collecting the cars and showing the cars and going for rides in the cars, and we can still do that. We still have that time together.
And she loves your motorcycle.
She does. She likes to ride, and we try to do as much of that as possible as well.
How you doing, dear? You want to go for a motorcycle ride? Sure. All right.
You come to see Daphne just about every day. Spend hours with her. She recognizes you. She's so happy to see you, and you're so happy to see her. Yeah.
The coming is great, but the going is really emotional for both of us.
This has only been about a couple of months, though, that you've been apart from her.
That's right.
You got a lot of steps to put down to work your way out of the labyrinth.
Yes.
When you look ahead, what do you see for yourself?
Hard to say. I don't know. I just kind of take it a day at a time.
You're young, you're healthy, you're robust.
Yeah.
You have a lot of passion, a lot of juice. Do you think you'll have another full, robust life?
I'd like to think so, but, you know, while I've got this life, I have to live this life.
Sometimes in the latter stages of my husband's life, when he had lost so much and could do so little, couldn't really walk, couldn't really talk. And some days I just think, oh, why doesn't he die sooner rather than later? He has so little. And then the next day I'd come back out in the morning and see him, and I'd say, well, I still have him. And I go back and forth between those two moods. Does that ever happen for you?
I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen.
But a
Yeah.
lot of caregivers actually burn out before their loved one passes away. That's a danger.
Yes, it is. And I try, as I know best, to try to overcome that situation. If I'll go home and work in the yard for a while or go out and cut firewood, I've got things at home that kind of keep me occupied and keep my mind off of it.
And then the next morning when you wake up, what's your first thought?
Well, I think about going and seeing Daphne.
But you make yourself stay away for some of the time.
Yeah, I try to do it, you know, an afternoon situation or maybe even take a day off and spend for my own self and try to do the things that I know that are important to keep myself healthy and keep my mind occupied on other activities.
Keith Walford has a long path ahead of him. But as he makes the transition from riding through life with Daphne to riding solo, he isn't alone. With the help of caring professionals and the support of his friends and family, he'll find his way through all the turnings to come. I want to tell you about a breakthrough in connecting with loved ones with Alzheimer's disease through creative expression. This is the most positive direction in the field. Hilly Gorenstein, she struggled through her 80s against the progression of Alzheimer's. She had been an artist. She'd lived in Chicago, but her only daughter lived in Paris. And on one of Berna, the daughter's bi-monthly fly-ins to check on her 89-year-old mother, Hilly made an announcement: "I'm closing down shop." Well, Hilly quickly slipped into a fog of listlessness, punctuated by agitation. She lost interest in communicating with anybody and basically detached from the world. But Berna wouldn't give up. On another of Berna's fly-ins, she asked her mother a simple question: "Mother, would you like to paint?" Hilly lifted her head, and for the first time in several years, the lights were on in her eyes. The few words she uttered were the first to make sense in a long time. "Yes, I remember better when I paint." Well, unbeknownst to Berna or her mother, that declaration, "I remember better when I paint," was being put to scientific testing. Researchers have learned through brain imaging that Alzheimer's disease normally spares the parietal lobe, the frontal lobe of the brain. It's related to emotions, creativity, and creative expression. Neurologists were recognizing the benefits of non-pharmacological therapies, such as group painting sessions with young people as mentors, and group outings to art museums and music concerts, which is really beginning to spread. The wonderful art museums in many of our cities are getting together consortiums of art and music venues and taking Alzheimer's patients to them on off hours, where they can, it's not about words, it's not about rational thinking, it's about the creative expression and intake of beauty and art and music. Only a tiny fraction of nursing homes and care facilities were using these methods when Hilly was suffering, but is becoming more popular. And Berna became determined to bring her mother back from her detached state, so she hired a student from the Art Students League, where Hilly had once studied, and got her mother encouragement. And at the age of 90, Hilly picked up a paintbrush for the first time in years, her mind fully concentrated on making a painting, and when she put down the brush, she said, "This is my hidden hour." It was her secret reconnection to her artistic self. And I know locally the Alzheimer's Association does something similar called Memories in the Making, and funds it by selling the paintings, which go for a pretty good price. That's a wonderful win-win situation. So Berna then found her mother saying the next day, "I'm still here." And from that day onward, Hilly painted and sculpted. She danced, which is another wonderful boost to mental awareness, and painted hundreds of paintings before she died on her 94th birthday. We've been aware for many years that maintaining an active mental lifestyle is protective against dementia, but the challenge has only recently been uncovered, which is it's important to find out what engages your particular loved one. You can't just get them to do crossword puzzles or play poker. Different people are engaged by different creative activities, and the key is finding the activity that will engage a unique individual. But just know this, the imagination remains intact right until the very end of this progressive disease. Dr. Sam Gandhi, who's an internationally known Alzheimer's researcher, talks about people who have never been writers or painters, but who feel their creative drive really unleashed for the first time when they develop Alzheimer's disease. So there is something positive about this. And the final turning, I want to tell you, is of the labyrinth on caregiving, is coming back. This is the most important turning for the caregiver. Coming back demands that you go out in the healthy world for some time every day. Reconnect with your own passions, your own transports of joy, like Keith did, your friends. Go back to work if you possibly can, and find out what were your lifelines before you were a caregiver. Singing, coaching, collecting causes, a job you loved, or writing a book about your experience. You'll have to fight against the guilt, and it's right there waiting to take you down, but a lot of it is misplaced. It's vital to understand that you are now on a different path from your loved one. And when you accept that he or she is not going to come back to the independent person he once was, you have to get back in touch with your identity, your passion, what gives your life meaning and a reason for being. And finally, in my view, the greatest threat of all in aging is, for both the receiver and the giver, is isolation, a sense of meaningless, nothing left to give. So I want to leave you with a novel program that a caregiver can use to reconnect with an elder around a new conversation. It's about creating a legacy story. And I have a short video that shows that little program. I think it's a couple of minutes if we can spare it. I think you'll find this interesting.
Aging not only challenges seniors mentally and physically, but it's the emotional pain that is often ignored, mainly due to losing a sense of purpose, perception that they no longer play a vital role in the family. Yet most don't even realize they can still offer the greatest contribution of all, their life lessons and personal history, a legacy that can have a profound influence on generations to come. The founders of LegacyStories.org have developed a simple and ingenious way to capture the most memorable moments of your life. It's called Pictorial Memories, audio recordings of life stories as they relate to important family photos.
This is me in 1959. We lived in Arlington, Virginia. I'm making my first Holy Communion.
This is the boat that I came over on. It was supposed to take 9 days, but we had some storm at sea, so it took a little over 10 days before I saw the Statue of Liberty. When I saw that, I knew I had arrived.
The benefits are significant, not only for care recipients, but also for the family and caregiver. Working together to create pictorial memories will keep your conversations positive and in some ways therapeutic. By using a free Legacy Stories smartphone app or the site's voice recorder, you can create, archive, and share hundreds of pictorial memories at no cost. And now Gail Sheehy has become a Legacy Stories ambassador to the caregiver community, so that caring for a loved one can be a more enriching experience for all. To that end, Gail is inviting you to start building your collection of pictorial memories, just as she has with her recollections of caring for her husband in his last 15 years. Listen to this.
This is how I remember my husband, Clay. Strong, fearless, passionate about history. We just loved going to London together. After 3 battles with cancer, Clay was in a nursing home in the Bronx. He announced one day, "I want to go to the country." We got him into a van with his oxygen tank and meds and drove to the mountains. He could sit on a porch at sunset. He said, "I forgot what beautiful was." When the doctor told me Clay probably had less than a week to live, I asked Clay if he'd like to go to his favorite jazz club. He used to be a drummer. The jazz pianist played "Life is What You Make It." Clay drummed on the table with swizzle sticks for 2 hours. At home, he said, that was a magical evening.
Go to GailSheehy.com and click on the Legacy Stories logo. After registering, you'll be automatically connected with Gail to share each other's pictorial memories and with other caregivers and their families.
people that you love is very much like what I do as a writer. And I can tell you that working with your loved one to create a legacy will enrich your spirit as you bring pleasure and enlightenment to your loved one. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, Gail. You had so many different messages to share with us, and we really appreciate it. What hit home for me was for the importance for the caregiver to stay connected and to ask for help, and the importance of relationships in our life at all levels and at all times, especially when caregiving, not to become isolated and alone, but to reach out to professionals, to friends, and to our community. I really like the story of the labyrinth also. I've walked on a number of different labyrinths myself, and the turning and the unknown nature of it is what makes it a beauty. So I just want to close up. We're getting ready to finish up here, and I have a couple key messages before we go. Now, almost all of us have been a caregiver, as Gail mentioned. I think in our community, it's about 1 in 4 families have a caregiver within them. And I was recently back east myself, serving as a caregiver for my own parents as they moved to a retirement community. The exciting thing for me was it was their choice on their timetable, but it was still a turning and a change. As a family caregiver, I appreciate how many resources we have in our county to help. People should not feel alone when they're faced with the challenges in their family that caregiving brings. I am proud to offer you this Aging Summit to help you assess what you need, both in terms of caregiving as well as making yourself feel safer. And in making the most of this opportunity, I also ask for something in return. I ask that you take a little time to join with us in our community to improve our community to become more safe and caring. Many of you have been to our summits in the past, and you know we don't just give good information and then stop. What we ask to do is turn our learning into action. Each of our summits has produced important additions to our services for older adults, such as county-funded transportation grants, and the creation of intergenerational and family caregiver positions. Feedback from an earlier summit led us to create our Aging and Independent Services call center with one easy number to call, 1-800-510-2020 for resources and information. You can also report elder abuse 24/7 on that line as well. This year, we're going to have 3 different work groups, and there'll be an opportunity for you to sign up. They will include caregiver resources and support, caregiving for those with Alzheimer's. The second group, elder abuse prevention and awareness. And finally, financial and life planning. I ask that you sign up to attend the work group discussions and help us move forward. There are forms available that will be provided for you. Now, before we close the webcast portion, I just want to say again a special call out and thanks to our Escondido Center for the Performing Arts crowd. Just a quick wave and thank you so much, everybody in North County. And also, I want to share with you that if you enjoyed today and you'd like to share it with friends and family, we will have this on our website at www.aisevents.org. You can link to our site and recommend this program to others. The whole simulcast program will be available. So this now concludes our simulcast part of the program. Thanks, North County. But we're not done in this room. We have a few more comments. I just want to share with you, when you look at your program, everybody's got their program with them. It's a beautiful design, really informative. In a few minutes at 11:30, we'll be starting our workshops. There are 5 different choices in each of the 3 different time periods. This is the grand exhibit hall, just to orient ourselves. The other rooms are right by the registration desk. We have volunteers on hand that will help you find your location. And everybody thinks there's no such thing as a free lunch. We have one. At noon to 12:45 is our lunch hour. Well, lunch 45 minutes. Your lunch ticket is attached to your evaluation form. It's a big red piece of paper that you'll have turn in for your lunch. Also, I would really like to ask that you attend our exhibitor hall. Our exhibitors contribute to this event and make it possible for us. And in return, they have some tremendous information to share with you. There's a list of exhibitors in your bag. Take a look. Now, for those that would like to sit around the table and enjoy lunch here, we have some wonderful videos for you to share. Now, also attached to the evaluation form, you'll see a ticket for an opportunity drawing. The drawing will be held right in this room at 2 o'clock after our last workshops end. You've got to turn in your evaluation, though, in order to be eligible for a prize. Keep one half of your ticket with you, turn in the other with the evaluation. And the secret, you must be present to win. So please join us back here at 2. Turn in your evaluations. We'll have volunteers to help. And in your bag, there is a bright yellow fall risk assessment tool. Please complete the questionnaire on your own and go to the back of the room. There they are waving, a good group of folks that will be providing a short in-person fall prevention screening, which you can then take and discuss with your doctor. So before I go, I just want to say thank you to all of you. I'll be back this afternoon around 2. But I may not see everyone then, and I want to say thank you so much for being here. Also, thank you to the many dignitaries and others that joined us, and also a special shout out today to a representative from Assemblywoman Shirley Weber's office, Jasmine Thomas. Thank you for being here also. So please enjoy the workshops and come back and see us a little bit later. Thank you.